Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and get started with the meeting. Um, I'm going to start by introducing myself. Hi, everyone. I am Laiel, an ambassador part of Troop 10080. I appreciate all of you for supporting my Gold Award and taking the time to join this meeting. This meeting will be recorded, and we ask that you remain muted. And if there are any questions to, please put them in the chat, and I will get to them at the end of the meeting. Um, this Zoom will be a part of a series of Zoom sessions with different individuals of the community. And today I've asked to speak with Sorry, I'm sorry. Today, the individual I've asked to speak today is Jeff West. He is the director of ASL in the drama program and is the teacher of the DHA students at South Plantation. So, welcome, Jeff. If you'd like to introduce yourself, you can go ahead and do so.
So yes, like Lael said, my name is Jeff West. I am a teacher for the deaf at South Plantation High School. I work specifically with what we call deaf plus students, which is they're not just deaf, but they also have additional special needs. So I have deaf behavior disorder, deaf autism, deaf intellectual delayed, that kind of thing. So specifically, I work with them on life skills and math and science classes. And just so you know, if you guys hear like videos playing in the background, my daughter is sitting on the couch on the other side of the couch scrolling YouTube, so bear with me. So, yep, born and raised right here in South Florida, and I graduated from FAU with a bachelor's in social work, and then did that for 7 years before I left to become a teacher, and now I've been teaching for 10 years.
Okay, thank you, Jeff, for telling us a little bit about yourself. Um, I'm going to get started with the meeting. So there are a few questions that people have asked in the registration link. So I'll ask you the question and then I'll mute so that you can answer it. Um,
Okay.
so one of the first questions that somebody had for you was, were you born deaf or was it something that develops later on in life?
My situation was a little bit strange, but I was born deaf, but we did not discover it until I was about 2 or 3 years old. We were basically noticing, my parents were noticing that my speech was not where it should be for a 3-year-old. So they brought me in, had me tested, and that was when we discovered that I was deaf. We suspect that it is a genetic predisposition towards injury or illness because I was born 2 months premature. I was supposed to be born at the end of June. I was born mid-April. So we believe that when I was born, because I spent 6 weeks in NICU under in incubation basically, so to develop my lungs because I wasn't breathing properly when I was born. So they think that the lack of oxygen is what caused the initial hearing loss for me. And then when I was 13, I was riding my bicycle and fell off and hit my head. So when before that, I was hard of hearing. And then after that, my hearing loss became degenerative. So now it is progressively worsening. Every few years, it'll go down a little bit more. So eventually, it'll all be gone. Right now, my right has been gone pretty much my whole life. So I depend on my left ear with a hearing aid on. Take it off though, and I hear absolutely nothing at all. And my grandparents, I could say the genetic part is because my grandparents on my dad's side. Oh, you okay? Okay. So on my dad's side, my grandparents were both deaf. And my grandmother was born hearing and lost her hearing at 6 months to spinal meningitis. And then my grandfather was born hearing and became deaf at 2 years old because of scarlet fever, is what we were told. So that's why we believe that there is a genetic predisposition to deafness that but it's impacted by other situations. So not necessarily born to it, but caused by something that ends up causing our deafness.
Thank you, Jeff. That was like really interesting. I'm wondering, so do you mean that your parents are not like deaf like you? Like, do they know ASL? Like, was it like challenging to like try to communicate with them when you found out, or like, you know? Yeah, go
Okay,
ahead.
so I had kind of the best of both worlds. I grew up with a lot of hearing friends, and I'm the only, well, not anymore, but I was the only deaf person in my family up until my youngest was born. And so many hearing tests for my daughter had proven that there's something going on. So we pretty much have labeled her as hard of hearing because of that reason, because her hearing test goes up and down every time we test her hearing. Every year, see, 1 year it is severe, and then another year is mild, moderate, and then another year is profound. So it just jumps up and down. So the audiologists aren't really sure what to make of it yet. So that's just an ongoing thing for us. Now, my dad was the oldest of what we call a coda, which is a child of deaf adults. And so my dad was the oldest of four codas. So his parents were both deaf and communicated solely through ASL. So when I was born, I was raised with the thought process of they wanted me to be able to speak as well as sign, but they wanted me to depend more on my speech and my hearing than on my hands and communicating through sign language. However, as a backup, my dad knew and was fluent in ASL. My mom struggled with learning ASL, always has. So most of the signs that she did know, um, she's forgotten most of it. So, and that's mostly because she's so used to just talking to me that sign language wasn't really necessary for her. And I'm able to read her lips with almost perfect accuracy without the need for ASL, which is not always the situation when you go out there, because really you only get about 30% of what's spoken when you rely on lip reading alone. But if you know the person really well, then the lip reading can become more beneficial and easier to pick up on.
Um, wow, that's like really cool. Um, sorry, let me like go through that
No, you're
question.
fine.
There was like a few that you answered already, like really fluently, so that was good.
Oh, okay. If you
Um,
need me to, I can expand on the communication part for others in the deaf community, not just myself,
mhm.
and how it works for a lot of our families. So if you want, just let me know and I can break that down a
Yeah,
little.
yeah, totally. Like you can go ahead. Like,
Okay, so typically in the deaf community, what you will find is that when parents find out that the child is deaf, is one extreme or the other. It's either the parent is, oh my God, my child is deaf. I don't know what I'm gonna do, and they start feeling helpless, and they don't have the resources to get the support that they need. So when that happens, often the schools end up doing everything as far as teaching the communication to the children. The parents very rarely learn ASL, or they try to push speech over ASL, even if it is a situation of the kid is what we call prelingually deaf, meaning they became deaf before they were able to speak. And in that kind of a situation, most often you will not find them able to speak clearly. Now, for me, it was a struggle for, I didn't actually say my first word until I was 4. Like actual, clear, legible word. I got my first hearing aid when I was 3, and I didn't start talking until I was 4, and I haven't shut up ever since, if you ask my family. So now with the parents who start feeling like overwhelmed and don't know what to do, most of the time you will see that they only picked up basic signs for expressing your needs. You know, water, bathroom, shower, sleep, things like that. So, or they will do what we call home signs, which is just gesturing made up signs that the family knows, but is not used outside in the real world or through ASL. So then you have the other extreme, which is the parents are kind of hovering. And like, yes, those parents, they tend to be more likely to learn ASL, but they also tend to baby the kids until to the point that they can't be independent. So the ones that are left to figure it out, they pick up a lot, but they don't understand what's going on because they don't have the communication with their family. Their communication is through school only, through their teachers, through their friends, their fellow deaf students, people like that, but not at home. So they go to school, they hang out, they're able to have that social aspect, but then they go home and they just sit and they're watching TV or they're in their bedroom, they just isolated because there's no communication with the parents, with siblings, because they didn't learn or weren't given the resources to learn ASL. So that those are kind of the two extremes. And so like I had a friend growing up and he's actually one of my best friends today. Didn't even have his first sleepover until we were in high school because mom was too afraid to let him out of the house outside of going to school. And we needed to study for a midterm exam, so I invited him to come out to my place because my dad was an expert in science, so we were able to kind of pick his brain for our final or midterm exam. But his mom was calling my dad like every 30 minutes until like midnight to make sure that my friend was okay and that everything was fine. Before her son finally got on the phone and said, "Mom, I'm cool, chill, leave me alone. I'm studying. That's it." So, but those are the two extremes. It's either the parents do nothing or have none of the resources to provide the support, or they do too much for the kid, and the kids are having to fight for that independence themselves. Now, my dad raised me like he raised my brother, so who is hearing, and he did not want me to be treated any differently than my brother. So yeah, there were times I depended on my parents for communication support, but most of the time it was my dad would look at me and go, "Did you catch that? All right, cool. Move on." But otherwise I would figure it out for myself if I didn't have my parents with me. And my dad wanted to make sure that that was my situation, that I was able to be independent because he grew up before the ADA, which is Americans with Disabilities Act, passed. And so he was, as the oldest, he was the interpreter. He would sit in front of the TV and interpret for his parents what was being said in the shows that they watched or the news that was being broadcast if there was a situation going on. He was the kid going at 9 years old to the bank with his dad to apply for a loan and helping his dad to communicate with the bank teller. He was the person going with, and awkward as it was, going with mom and sister to the OBGYN and interpreting for a doctor's appointment. So for his parents. So those were things that my dad had to do as a kid that he grew up with, and he wanted to make sure that that was never going to be my situation. So I was thrown in the deep end of the pool, but when I needed to be saved, he would pull me back in and help me out, and then throw me right back out again, so to speak. So it was like I said, I got the best of both worlds because my dad was raising me from his experience and his understanding of what I'm capable of, and making sure that I would not, that being deaf was not an excuse.
Sorry, Jeff.
No, you're
I'm looking
fine.
at the
You're
questions.
absolutely fine.
Um, One of the questions is, upon first learning American Sign Language, was it difficult for you, or were you just like,
Hold on. I just accidentally hit a button and popped up over your face. So I think I accidentally hit the share button. So what was the question again?
upon first learning American Sign Language, was it difficult for you, or were you just easygoing and like fluent upon like going into it?
Well, remember my grandparents were deaf, so they signed and they lived in Margate while I was growing up in Deerfield, so they did not live far. They passed away when I was young. I was 6 and then 7 when my grandmother and then my grandfather passed away within 6 months of each other. But I started signing at the age of 4 as well, and picking up a lot. And when you're young, you can pick up languages quick. But a lot of the issue in the deaf community that you will find is that language deprivation from not having the communication at home end up leading to issues in school and life with literacy and things like that. So for my dad, again, wanted to make sure that if I was going to be raised, if I'm deaf, I'm still going to be raised with the language, both languages. So I had the backup. So for him, ASL was my backup, and then for me, as I got older, ASL had become my primary. But in reality, ASL was my first language, and English was my second.
So you honestly answered the second question that I was going to ask, which is, do you use ASL outside of teaching? Yes, like you do.
Yeah, my wife is an interpreter. My daughter is hard of hearing. My oldest, usually it when we are kind of shutting down and we're just not feeling that social
Mhm.
ability, like your social battery is just drained, then we tend to use ASL more often in the house. So, but yes, absolutely, we use ASL every single day at home, at school. So my wife is also a teacher for the deaf as well as an interpreter, so
Mhm.
she's signing all day just like I am.
Okay, wow. Is your daughter as fluent as you and your wife?
No. Both of my
Mhm.
daughters are have the ability. My oldest kind of stopped signing for a while, and
Mhm.
this is common when you have coders. They kind of become resistant to picking up because they feel like people are staring at you. And I'm sure this may be common with any family who's like coming from another country and the children are being depended on, okay, to interpret and speak for mom and dad because the kids are picking up the English better than the parents. So in this situation, though, it was more when you're using ASL. your hands are moving, so you're bringing a lot more attention to yourself than if you're just, say, speaking Spanish or speaking Creole.
Mm.
So in that situation, I think my oldest really kind of just got really shy about signing in public and kind of stopped for a few years and then started picking it up again at the beginning of middle school. And taking ASL classes has helped with that a lot as well. So in the last 3 years, we have really thrived on that. My youngest was signing and never really stopped. Is she as fluent as me or my wife? No, but both of them do very well with it. And they both have been signing since they were about 6 months old. My
Wow.
daughter wants to say hi real quick, the little one. So she's popping in for a second. This is
Hi.
Alexa. Her sign name is Alexa, which is actually the sign for curious, because she
Oh,
has always been
Alexa.
very curious, very nosy, and asking questions all the time since she was able to speak. So, yes,
Aw.
this is Alexa.
Hi.
And she's waving bye-bye and going back to YouTube, I think.
Um, so, um, should that-
You okay, honey? We're packing to go out of town tomorrow, so my oldest just came out to throw a few things in the suitcase.
okay, okay. Where are you guys going?
We are going to Daytona to visit I call them my outlaws, my mother and father-in-law.
Um,
So, yeah, we're going up to see the grandparents. We're staying through the weekend for 4th of
mm,
July. So, just
oh
kind of
yeah.
getting away from all the noise here
Hmm.
because where they live is pretty quiet even on 4th of July.
That's pretty good. Guess you really won't see that here, but you know.
Nope. We have fireworks starting already, and then they go until like a week after the 4th of July down here.
Yeah. Like a week before and like a week after.
Yep.
Mm. So one of the questions is eye contact enough or should we speak slowly? Like as well. Like is it
Um,
enough for yeah.
so eye contact is very important when with sign language and being able to observe, but you have to realize also ASL is not just your hands. It is a full body language. I'm limited because of the screen size that I'm working with, but when I am signing at home with my family or in my classroom, I get animated. Okay, my whole body is moving around. I am showing like my daughter is going like this because my hands start flying pretty quick. So, but yeah, so eye contact is very important in ASL. But as far as like if they're asking about like lip reading, then it's more about being able to see the person's face. And but going back to what I said before, lip reading is not an accurate science. It is a guessing game at best. If you do not know the person or if you have only known them for a little while, you're gonna miss a lot. And if you are going from a distance, I can kind of read lips up to about 10 to 15 feet away. Past that, I couldn't tell you what most people are saying. And if it is really loud, like say the school cafeteria, and the cafeteria lady trying to tell me how much my student needs to pay for the lunch, then I would struggle with that, and then she would have to turn the monitor over and show me the price on the screen because she could be saying 315, and I'm thinking she said 350 because they look the same on the lips. So when it comes to, I don't know about other languages, but specifically with English, there are 43 phonemes, which is the individual sounds that we make when we talk. So, e, oo, things like that, all those different sounds. Only 13 are actually visible on the lips out of 43. So it's literally a one in just under 1 in 3 sounds are visible on the lips. So we have to kind of rely on what we see and then do the mental gymnastics of piecing together and following the context of the conversation to know that we are talking what we are talking about and what that person is saying. But it is mentally exhausting if you are the only deaf person in a group of hearing people, such as when I go to work. I am one of two deaf staff on campus. So I need my interpreters because without them, I'm playing visual ping pong, jumping back and forth across the table, trying to read lips from up to upwards of five to 10 people sometimes in meetings.
Okay. So,
Yeah, she's playing peekaboo.
oh, hi. Aw. So I'm gonna move on to some of the questions in the chat just because it's
Okay.
already past 6:30 and we just want to honor everyone's time.
Mhm.
So, oops. So the first question, yeah, you answered this one, but the question was, do you feel it was hard to learn ASL?
For me personally, no, because again, it was my first language, but it really depends on when you start to learn. The younger you
Mm,
are, the faster you will pick it up. The older you become, the harder it is to pick up new languages. I'm
mm.
trying to learn Spanish myself.
Ooh.
Speaking it, no, I will not insult anybody by trying to speak the language, but I want to be able to at least read it and send an email to parents because I have several students every year whose parents are primarily Spanish speaking.
Mhm.
So I want to be able to have that ability to not rely on Google Translate, knowing that it's not going to be fully accurate.
Mhm.
But I'm 41 and I am finding it very difficult to pick up on a lot of it. So, and then as far as like the speech goes, when I'm trying to catch people who are speaking in Spanish, it is so difficult because Spanish seems to move faster than English when people talk in
Yeah.
Spanish. So it's very difficult. And then when people like roll the R's, I can't do that. I sound like Chewbacca from Star Wars. So, like I said, I will never try to insult anybody trying to have a conversation in Spanish. I learned one sentence in Spanish in college, and that was to answer phone for a clinic that I would volunteer. And it was call back later, please, which was, I believe, llamo más tarde, por favor. That's as good as I get.
Wow, that was great. That
Well,
was really
thank you.
great. That's
So, but
great.
yeah, I was handling the deaf patrons at the clinic, and then the receptionist handled the Spanish-speaking patrons. But when she would leave to go to meetings, and I was responsible, put the deaf guy in charge of the phones, great idea. I would pick up, and if I hear English, I would say, "Look, call back later, please." And if I hear Spanish, llamo más tarde, por favor. And then click. That was it.
Wow. That's great, Jeff.
So yeah, it really depends on the age and how willing you are to learn the language. And that goes for any language, and it's also a matter of practice, practice, practice. You have to have somebody you can practice with to be able to keep that information in your mind. Because
Mm,
if you don't have somebody to practice on, it will go away and you will forget everything.
mm. Great job answering that question. The second question someone asked was, how long do you think it takes the average person to learn ASL?
The same as any language, about 10 years to become fully fluent.
Wow.
Studies have shown that to become truly fluent in any language requires a minimum of 10 years of exposure and like falling deep dive into the language. So it would be like if I want to really wanted to learn and speak it and become fluent, it would be in my best interest to move to a country that primarily speaks that language or move to an area that primarily speaks the language.
Hmm.
So, and it's the same for the deaf community. If you want to learn ASL, you have to fully immerse yourself into it, find deaf social events that are going on, and jump in. We have one on Commercial and University at the Starbucks on the third Friday every month.
Oh.
And typically we have about 15 deaf people that show up, and we welcome anyone who wants to come in and that is wanting to learn and practice their signs. But yeah, it's a Starbucks on Commercial and University on the Tamarack Lauderhill border. And third Friday every month if anyone is interested in that.
Okay, thank you. I'm interested. So,
Mhm.
um, the next question someone asked is, what's something you wish schools did better for deaf students?
Accessibility.
Mhm.
I thought for since I started teaching to set up a visual emergency system in our school, which finally was installed last year. I graduated from the same school that I am teaching at 20 years ago. The program was set up in 1975, so it is 50 years old, and we have never had anything outside of the fire alarm for visuals until this past year. Now we have monitors in every hallway, we have monitors in every classroom that will tell us if we are on a lockdown, that tells you if we have severe weather alert or things like that. We are hoping this year to add bell alerts as well, so that deaf students are able to see when the bell is ringing and not depend on the interpreters for that.
Mhm.
And then not having to fight for accommodation is another big issue in the deaf community. So it is, I mean, anywhere you go, it's not just in schools. It is doctor's appointments. Many doctors don't want to provide interpreters even though they're required to. Or they say we're not taking new patients because they don't want to provide the interpreters. So, and not realizing that an interpreter is literally a tax write-off. You get the bill, you pay it, and then you claim it back at the end of the year on your taxes. So you're not losing money. It'll take a few months to get it back, but you will get that money back as long as you keep the bills. So, and it's just that's a lot of it anywhere we go. It's just accessibility and visual awareness. So it's a big issue for us because we don't often do not have it.
Ah, I did not know they didn't want to provide that at the doctors. Like, I'd never thought about that, like, at all.
Mhm.
Um,
That's why
so,
I married my interpreter.
what you
That's
did?
my joke, yes, but
Uh, I get it. Okay. Another one of the questions is, what is a misconception about deaf people that you often come across?
oh boy, I thought you said we wanted to honor people's time. I'm gonna be here all night.
Oh my gosh, is there a lot?
I'll give you my most common ones. First of all, deaf people do not read Braille. Please stop asking. You have no idea how often growing up and even through adulthood in 2025, I have gone to McDonald's and told people I'm deaf, give me a moment to look at the menu. And they're like, oh, do you want a Braille menu? Like, I don't need this, I need this.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
deaf people drive? Yes, statistically, we are actually safer drivers than hearing people because we don't have the stereo. We typically don't have a stereo blasting. I can't
Mhm.
hear anything outside of my car when I'm driving, but my head is constantly on a swivel, keeping an eye out for everything that is going on, watching cars and being prepared if someone starts to cut through, or if I see. People ask, well, how do you hear the sirens? I'm like, I don't. I see the flashing lights in my rearview mirror and I get out of the way, just like everybody else can. But
Mhm.
yeah, it's all visual. So I actually, for 10 years, I was riding a motorcycle as my primary commute to work. And then when my second kid was born, we got rid of it because I started dropping off both kids at school, and I couldn't bring two kids on a motorcycle. I wasn't even bringing one kid on the motorcycle, let
Yeah.
alone two. So, but yeah, those are two of the biggest ones. And understanding that deaf people, there was a president of Gallaudet University, I. King Jordan, said deaf people can do anything except hear.
Hmm.
We have doctors who are deaf, we have lawyers who are deaf, we have airplane pilots who are deaf, we have sailors who are deaf. There's nothing that deaf people cannot do except hear.
Mhm. Hmm. Wow,
We
those
just
are
have to be given a chance to try.
mhm. Another one of the questions was, how do you become an interpreter?
There are different pathways. If you decide college is the way to go, then we have what's called an ITP, which is Interpreter Training Program. And that would be you are literally studying to become an interpreter. You're taking ASL classes, you are taking ethics classes, you are taking social studies and things like that. So all preparing you to become an interpreter. And interpreting is a certified career. So you have to pass a test. Well, we have our RID RID, the Registry of Interpreters for the Deaf, has their own certification that is nationwide. There's one called NIC, which I don't know what it means, but it is one of the more common ones as well that is accepted nationwide. The EIPA, which is the Educational Interpreters Proficiency Assessment, which is for interpreters who work in the school system. So those are the interpreters you see in the classroom. Those are the interpreters you see on school grounds. So those tests are for those interpreters. Florida, sadly, is one of the few states that does not have minimum requirements for interpreters to be hired. So someone can literally find a person whose aunt, cousin, brother was deaf and they picked up a few words and said, all right, great, you're hired. So I don't know if you remember, there was a few years back we had a hurricane going on, and then there was a guy that was brought up on TV, and he was interpreting, and it was his cousin was deaf. That was his experience. They put him up on TV, and he was signing random stuff, talking about bears and pizza on statewide television, waiting for emergency information about a hurricane. Like, unfortunately, that's like where the accessibility issue comes in for us, is the importance of having certified, competent interpreters.
Yeah, I remember that, and
Mhm.
that was crazy.
Yeah.
Like, um, what does a typical lockdown look like with your students? Like, is it difficult?
Um, Now that we have the visual alert, it is a lot easier. Before the visual alert was established, I had to depend on text messages from the administration or my co-teacher across the hall to let me know that there was an announcement for a lockdown. And then I would get the kids and we would go into our safe space and hide. And then I would shut out the lights and I would drop the curtain down. Now, in my safe space, in my classroom, we have a little hockey puck that, well, I call it a hockey puck because that's what it looks like, but it's a white disc with a light. And I can tap it and turn the light on to so that the students are able to see me and see me signing when we are supposed to be in the dark. So we go into the safe space and I shut out all the lights. I drop the curtain down to block the window and then just sit there in silence. If I hear something, then I'll turn on the light to see where the noise is coming from if it's one of my students. Typically, when I hear something, I'm able to determine which direction it's coming from. So if it's coming from outside the room, I typically will know. And then if it's not coming from in the room, I know it's one of my students is making noise. Which comes with having special needs students because some of them have STEM that are auditory, and I have to calm them down to make sure that they are quiet during the lockdown. And so, yeah, I mean, it is difficult. No, my students pretty much get what is needed and that they need to be quiet. They become anxious. Okay, with it's a lockdown, that's the whole point, is you're going to be scared. So I just do what I can to keep them calm and quiet, and we just stay until now with the visual alert it says all clear. Then we will go back out. But my students now are able to see it and go, okay, we're fine. Let's go back to class. So it's a
Okay.
lot easier now than it was before.
Hmm.
Because when I was
And
depending on text, if God forbid my co-teacher was absent, and then somebody from administration forgot to text me. I'm still teaching in the middle of a lockdown without even realizing it. And then we have security opening the doors going, what are you doing? Because nobody texted. So that happened a couple of times, which is why I ended up going directly to the school board 3 years ago and gave this whole speech about my experience with the actual lockdown that we had that was an identified threat in 2019. And I
mm,
shared my experience with that, where I had my hand on the door, I had my hand on a wooden briefcase because there was a name threat. They named the school on social media. I think it was Instagram or something. They named teachers in the classroom of where the student was pretending to call from. It ended up being a hoax, and they caught the student responsible eventually. But the student was saying, "Haha, I'm in the teacher's classroom, and they didn't even check for my ID, and I don't even have a student ID." Like this kid was going all out, keeping the school, doing everything to keep the school on lockdown. But without knowing that this was fake, thinking that this was the real deal, again, I have my hand on the door because we didn't have a visual alert system to tell me what's going on, that we are on lockdown or that we're all clear. So I have my hand on the door, I've got my hand on a briefcase, and I'm feeling vibrations on my door, somebody turning my doorknob. And then suddenly the door opened and it's our SRO, who is the school police officer, standing in front of a full line of fully armed SWAT behind her. And she wanted to make sure that her face was the first one that I saw so that I would know that it was okay. But apparently, at the same time we were dealing with a lockdown, we were also dealing with a gas leak by the cafeteria. So they were evacuating the entire south side of the school or the east side of the campus while everyone in the main building was still on lockdown away from the gas leak. So it was just a terrifying experience. And I went to the school board and I was like, don't let one of these kids become a victim before you make a decision to do something. And they approved it immediately. Hold on one second. My daughter's asking. Huh? Okay. Sorry. My daughter is telling me to lower my voice.
Oh,
So,
oh,
so yeah,
sorry.
go
Uh,
ahead.
um, when there is an interpreter with a patient, what should that interaction look like? Should the speaker speak directly to the patient or be the interpreter?
Okay, very good question. And this is any time you have an interpreter in the room acting as the interpreter. As far as you are concerned, the interpreter is not there. You are speaking to the student, the patient, the client, whoever the deaf person is. You are speaking directly to them. You are looking at them. You are acknowledging them. One of the biggest issues that we have is the doctor will look at the interpreter, tell him, tell her, tell them, and the interpreter's job is to interpret exactly what is said verbatim. So if the doctor is saying, tell him, the interpreter is saying, tell him that we need to take medicine for this injury, or tell her that we're going to be preparing for surgery soon. Okay, instead of saying, hey, Jeff, hey, Jennifer, hey, whatever, okay, and acknowledging the person, they only tend to acknowledge the interpreter. And then the interpreter is feeding everything instead of just saying, instead of advocating. And interpreter typically will advocate for the deaf client and let them know, speak directly to them, not to me. I will tell them exactly what you say. They'll be looking at me, but talk to them. So that's typically how it should be. Whether it's a doctor's office, it is a classroom. That was actually how I got my very first referral in high school, was I cursed out my science teacher, because he kept saying, tell him, tell him, tell him. And I said, my name is not tell him, my name is Jeffrey Flippin West, and you need to acknowledge that and talk to me.
Oh my,
So yeah,
Jeff.
I got a referral and a week of lunch detention for that one, back when we still had lunch detention. So
Yikes.
yeah,
Probably
so it's
wouldn't do that
very
again
important to
after
speak
that.
directly to the deaf client. Yeah, he
Mhm.
never did it again. He learned really quick after that. And funny enough, he was the one that reminded me about it when I started teaching 10 years ago, because he was still working for the school. He didn't retire until about 5 years ago, and he was like 78, I think. So he had been teaching for a long time.
Wow.
So he ended up becoming one of my favorite teachers and favorite people to be around at South
Oh.
after he finally realized it.
Mhm.
Yeah, Laiel can tell you from drama that I am very blunt, and that is the deaf thing.
Yeah.
There's no real secrets, and that comes with having a very visual language. Body language is so important, so it's clear when somebody is not being honest because your body language changes and you become withdrawn.
Mhm.
Where being deaf, ASL, we are just out there, we're belting out our arms and we're moving our whole body. So when you're suddenly not moving that much, then you know something's not right.
Mhm.
So,
Well, thank you, Jeff. I think was all the questions that we have for now because it is nearing 7 o'clock. So I think we
oh, we
will.
froze. Okay, we're good. We froze for a second. Now we're okay.
Oh, okay. But I think I'm going to wrap up this meeting.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you, Jeff, for taking the time to host this meeting with me.
Thank you for inviting me. I appreciate that. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Um, Also thank you to all of you for joining this meeting and getting to know more about ASL and who Jeff is. And hopefully you learned a little bit or a lot, hopefully. Um, I'm on Facebook and Instagram, and I think you guys should follow me so I can put those in the chat for you guys to follow. And if there are any further questions, please email me. I will also drop that down below. And I look forward to, all of you joining me in future sessions this month. And I hope you'll have a great rest of your night. Bye, Jill.
Have a good night.
Bye, good night.